Because sometimes people want to speak and it can bring an atmosphere that makes it a bit harder for them. Go ahead.
Hi, people.
Hello.
Totally different tone.
That's why I was trying to.
It's good, no, but this actually, we'll refer back to this, so just hold that presence. We'll come back to it in a sec. If we can just go to John chapter 4, verse, we'll go from 23. I'll just read. But the hour is coming, and now is,
Yes, sir. Wow. Come on.
when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The word truth pops up quite a few times there. I think it's about that whole section, that whole paragraph, at least 3 times. There's another paragraph I want to refer to. It's gone really quiet. Okay. Can we go to Revelation 12, verse 10? Revelation 12, verse 10. Put that up on the board. I was trying to find it. Okay, it's on the screen. Okay. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. So the accuser, so just remember that word accuser and remember the word truth. And there's just one more quick verse and we'll go into it. So we've done John, we've done Revelation. If we go to Romans 12, verse 1. Romans 12, verse 1. If we can get that up here. Okay, see. Okay, cool. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. So if you just note that word acceptable. So now we have 3 words. We've got truth, we've got acceptable, and we've got accuser. How do I tie those in with praise and worship? These scriptures just kept coming to me, and I was like sitting in the car and I was like, well, what's this got to do with praise and worship? But for some reason they just kept coming to me, so I thought, okay, God, I'll just let you do your thing. It's really dangerous, I think, this topic, worship and praise, because how do you know if your worship has been accepted? Is it determined by the decibels of how loud it is or how quiet it is? I don't know, because even the word loud, it's a relative word. If somebody is usually really, really quiet, this might be loud. Whereas I know I speak quite loudly, so actually I'm quite quiet right now. So if you ask me, am I loud, it's relative to a normal state. So I think when we talk about how loudly we praise, I think it is an individual case-by-case situation. It is important that we praise loud, but you know what loud is for you.
That's right. That's right.
And you know what quiet is for you.
That's right.
Because the Bible says, you know, God is not a fool. He created you. He put the lungs in your body. He knows what the decibel range of that is. And if you're not maximizing that, then that's for you to work out with God. That's not for me to say, well, that sounds loud or that sounds quiet. So you can see why that territory already is quite dangerous. But that word truth, again, is another area, because what does truth mean? Truth, if you drill down into what truth means, words such as acceptable pop up, words such as verified pop up, and I thought to myself, well, what is truth? Truth is when something has been tested, tried, and has been deemed a fact or correct. So then how do I connect that with the accuser of the brethren? I remember Pastor Ena preached one, I'll never forget this vision that I had while she was preaching. I think she painted the picture. When the Bible talks about Satan being the accuser of the brethren, everyone knows what a stock market is, right? So we've all seen it on TV where the guys are sort of like literally being frantic in the stock pit, it's called, and there's just phone calls coming through, information coming through, and people are shouting, and what they're doing is they're processing the information per second as it's coming through, and they're analysing it and determining at that point whether something is a yes or a no, whether it's acceptable or it's a decline in terms of offers for stocks and buying shares on the market. And it's the same kind of vision I kept having in terms of the heavenly courts. A frantic place where, on one side you've got, I guess, the hosts and the angels, etc., fighting on our behalves, petitioning on our behalves to say, well, hey, look, Minister Marcia's just given a praise, Minister Nicky's just given a praise, or this gentleman, or Cortez over there's just given a praise. And that's brought before, a certain host of judges. But then at the same time, the accuser of the brethren, who also has his hosts and his legal team, looks at your heart and determines whether that actually is true or not. And the measure is not how loud it is or how many times you run around the church. Don't get me wrong, that's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what I'm saying is that it comes down to how true your worship is. And the only people that can really determine that are yourselves, really. Because there's no point in having to go at the guy in the car park, pulling in, coming into church, and then lifting up your hands and, it's not really an acceptable form of worship or praise by that point, especially if you haven't repented before you go into it.
Come on, Mike.
And I feel like, so the other day we were at rehearsals and we rounded up and stuff, and we were given these like passes and stuff, like I think some people have them on, and I went to collect mine. And this is like, I don't want to get into trouble for saying this, but it's just something that stuck in my mind and I have to raise it. So I got mine and I looked at it and thought, okay, cool. And it said, we're at City Church, and they were like, you have to have this, otherwise you can't get it, cool. But it also said performer, and I thought, oh.
You clocked it, mate. Yeah.
So then I thought, or is it because we're in the theatre, or we're in Gorman State Theatre, and we've got lights, camera, action, that we're now performers? And then I thought to myself, first I was going to say something, then I thought, I actually felt convicted not to say something. And if you know me, you know that if I've got something to say, Bishop will tell you, I'm quite candid with, opinions that I might have or things that I feel. I like to speak out. I don't like to speak behind closed doors. But I really felt convicted not to say anything because I actually felt that that's what God felt we needed to be branded as. Like, I honestly felt that at that point, I felt like, yes, Lord, I agreed. I mean, this is just me personally. I don't want to change the mood. Like, we can go back to jumping in a minute. But this is me personally. I felt that was God speaking to say, well, I'm sorry, guys, but this is where it's at. So then, I mean, Minister Nicky, since then, I've been sort of quite like concerned about my positioning as a musician or whatever, and it's like, you know, you sit on the keyboard, you see so many things happening all the time, especially like Supersonic, and it gets quite autopilot. I don't know if you guys, how many people drive here? How many people have ever got home from driving and don't remember how you even got home? You know, and the mind is a very powerful thing. You know, God in all his awesome has created the brain in such a way where when something is done repetitively, so many times over and over again, Minister Nicky will tell you as a keyboardist, fantastic one, sometimes he might play something that if I try to do it, you know, 10, 20 times, I won't be able to do it, but he's got something which is called muscle memory. He's done it so many times, he doesn't have to think about it, it just happens instantaneously. It's the same way when, you know, you're really tired, you just get home and you pull into your drive or onto the road and you're like, wow, God is good, how did I even get here? But then God was speaking to me and referring that to some of our praise and worship where it becomes repetitive and autopilot, and you know, as soon as you hear the riff or the music going, you start singing the song, you're singing the song, you're singing the words, but you're not even thinking about what you're singing about. I do a bit of classical music at the moment. I'm studying, and one thing that we had to write an essay about recently, and was quite interesting, was about how music was back in the day, sort of like early 14th, 15th century. Hearing music was actually a privilege. Music wasn't sold audibly. Music was sold on sheets of paper. That's how people purchased. The same way we go and buy CDs and buy, you know, MP3s and stuff. They would purchase a score. Yeah. And that was like the exciting thing. You'd go to the shop and you'd buy a score and you'd be like, oh wow, this is the new Mozart, or this is the new Beethoven. And it would be up to you to study that and interpret that and enjoy it before you even got to hear it. And if eventually you got to hear it, it might have sounded a little bit different from how you had interpreted it in terms of the heart of the composer or the writer, because there weren't really any directives all the time in terms of like the tempo of it. It wasn't like, okay, this has to be jazzy, this has to be gospel, this needs drums. It was just a basic song, and a lot of the times the same with the lyrics. If we talk about, Minister Marcia spoke about the Psalms, there's 150 Psalms, and if the music was that important, this is just my interpretation, the music would have been published. But what was most important were the lyrics. Because we don't have the scores or the chords or, you know, instructions in terms of the music. So it then shows that the music is something to, within that section anyway, to complement the most important thing, which are the lyrics.
That's good.
So I love it when the lyrics are on the screen a lot of the times, because sometimes you're singing something, but until you read what you're actually singing, it's just another song that's in your head.
Good man.
And I think that it's really important in this day and age where we've got technology now and people are recording all kinds of stuff, and I can record on an iPhone, I can do some music on an iPhone. I mean, it's really easy to sort of get creative and stuff, and that's great, but we have to start remembering what worship and praise is all about. It's about truth, you know. I know we spoke, some of the speakers earlier on mentioned about praising to obtain something, and again, I'm going to be a little bit controversial and say, for me personally, I think if you're praising only to get something from God, then there's a problem. Because you should be praising Him just because
He is. Because He is.
Just because you're alive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't have to be in dire straits to start rolling on the floor. You should just be so in awe of God's creation, and more importantly, I spoke about this the last time when I spoke, you should be trying to win souls and praying that God uses you to do that. I mean, these are the kind of things that we should be really, really trying to focus on. And I think there's a young child sitting, like really young toddler. I don't know if they've popped out, but all day, the kid's just been literally every 2 minutes, like, and you know it's not just sort of, oh, the kid's just making noise, or, you know. That's the kind of worship and praise that God is interested in. God, he's not interested in a performer. He's not interested in, like, I find it quite amazing. I'm on Instagram, how sometimes you see an Instagram picture of somebody praising, but they've put up the Insta. So how did you get the picture of you lifting your hands? I don't understand how you can stop worship, like mid-worship, and then... I mean, but this is where we are now. It's like these things are more important than the actual worship and praise. So I have the title, which I should have said in the beginning, which is Worshiping the Worship. I'll say that again, worshiping the worship, not actually worshiping God. Because that is something that I think in a church like this, where God has blessed us so much with a leader who has a musical and praise and worship background and is one of the pioneers in this country and has access to amazing people such as Minister Nicky, Minister Marcia, people who've just poured so much into the church. I think it's a great thing, but it's also a very dangerous thing, and we need you to pray for us, because that type of power and that type of influence can go either left or either right. You know, it's really important that we start to understand and drill back down to what praise is, what worship is. Because remember, Satan is acute. Every single second that every thought you have, everything you say, every action you make is calculated, is recorded, and is presented as a reason for you to either be approved or declined in your prayer, in your worship, in your... It constantly happens. It's like, imagine a court, like yesterday, Pastor was talking about like light speed in terms of like going back and forth from Philly, 52 seconds. So imagine within that period of time, 52 petitions, for example, being made within 1 second of why your blessing shouldn't be approved or why your praise should not be acceptable. That's how frequent in my mind, you know, the enemy is. It's day and night. It's not, oh, you know, from 9 to 5. Do you know what I mean? So you know that from 6 you're good. So I just, you know, for me, I love this church, and when I first started, it was definitely the praise and worship that made me stay. And I remember my good friend who told me about Ruach, who actually doesn't go to Ruach, and I remember I was looking for a church, this is like about 15 years ago, and she was like, Myx, you should go to this church. I don't know why, but I really feel like you'll connect with it. And I remember I came and I was visiting, and then I was in the crowd, and Minister Nicky, who I hadn't spoken to ever before, he pointed at me, and then we was kind of making eye contact, and then after the service, he was like, oh, do you do music? And we just started talking, and I don't know how he knew, and then the next minute, you know, I ended up joining. So I know that praise and worship is something which we have been blessed with in this house. It's a very, very powerful thing that we have. But it's important that we remember what praise and worship actually is in the first place. And it's not just singing, it's not just songs. I mean, yesterday, I think the dancers, it was such a powerful act of worship and praise. And I mentioned my brother Cortez before, and I mean, I'm going to say this, I don't know, I hope this goes down well, but I was thinking about him because he comes to Wolfram Snow quite a lot, and you know, he hangs with us and stuff. And then, you know, sometimes you think, but God, why haven't you, like, yeah. You know, because sometimes I think, you know, if you're being truthful, we're using the word truth, you know, sometimes you do ask these questions. But then today, because yesterday I was watching the lady surrounding him with the stuff, and I just thought that was so powerful. But then it kind of hit me, and I don't know if this is the reason, but for me, my personal answer at that point when I watched was, because his praise is pure in this state. Because sometimes when God allows us to get to where we want to get to, it contaminates us, it messes us up. You know, people don't say hi to each other, then they come and lead worship, and I'm like, how does that work? And I'm not, you know, I'm not getting at us, I'm just, but I'm just saying, I don't understand this kind of stuff. I don't understand. You know, if that's the state that someone needs to be in to make sure they get to heaven and be pleasing and acceptable to God, that's just it. Thank you. I mean, I'll just leave it there.
Come on, put your hands together for my panel. Wow. I want you all to grab a hold of the mic. We're going to talk now.